Welcome to the Dr. Vibe Show. It is Dr. Vibe here live from the worldwide offices in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. And you're listening to the Dr. Vibe Show, the 2012 Black Weblog Awards winner as Best International Blog. And we're speaking it that you are blessed and highly favored and a magnet for miracles. Miracles. I like that. Hey, if you want to touch base with us tonight, you can hit me on Twitter at DRVIBESHOW. If you want to call in, you can call us via Skype at DOCTORVIBE42. And if you want us to call you, if you're in North America, follow me on Twitter, send me a direct message, and we'll give you a call. I will not share your number. And tonight's guest, or one of tonight's guests, is Stacey Marie Robinson, and she has a really special event coming up. But I was blessed to meet her. It's about a little under a year ago. We were on the panel of the Battle of the Sexes in Toronto, and she was fantastic, and she's doing a lot of wonderful things in the world of reading and book publishing. But she has a special event. I guess the first leg of it starts this Saturday, the first annual Toronto Urban Book Expo, not festival, expo, and she's here with us on the show tonight to share with us. So good evening, Stacey. How are you?
Good evening. I'm doing really good tonight. How are you?
I'm fantastic. I've humbled that Stacey canceled her piano stuff tonight to be on this show. So I feel honored and special that she canceled piano to be on the show tonight. So really feel good about that. Thank you so much for taking time. And I know as an event comes up, it gets crazier and crazier most of the time. So we appreciate you taking the time to share with us tonight.
My pleasure.
Great stuff. Well, I know we don't have a lot of time, but can you give a little bit of background about yourself and also with Kaya Publishing?
Okay. Well, as mentioned, my name is Stacey Marie Robinson. I was born and raised right here in Toronto, and I am a writer. I've been writing for as long as I've known how to write. I enjoy telling stories, and with time I realized it was important to tell the stories of my environment, my generation, my culture, and this is something that I kind of grew into almost unexpectedly. So writing as a hobby has now kind of turned into writing as a social mission, because I really believe that the stories of Canada and Black Canadians, Caribbean Canadians really just kind of need to be documented, and specifically for the generation that I was raised in. So I founded Kaya Publishing in 2007, just kind of as a way to publish my own books, because I wasn't having any luck in the mainstream publishing market. So Kaya Publishing is kind of my passion and my way of kind of bringing my stories to the public, and also just opening up a conversation about urban culture and the Canadian experience, and just kind of giving it a place to exist in print. So that's a little bit about me and my publishing company, and I'm very excited about a few events I have coming up to kind of just develop urban fiction and Canadian culture in that way.
Fantastic. Well, just before we go further, I know there are people already listening, and we thank you so much. Again, if you have any tweet or question for Stacey Marie or myself, definitely you can touch base with her on Twitter at KYA Publishing, and myself, I'm at DRVIBESHOW on Twitter. So anything you have to say, hey, just share it with us, and we'll certainly answer you back. And thank you to True Omega Nexus for retweeting about this, and other people out there. So much appreciated. And one other thing, if you want to hear more about Stacey, we did an interview a few months ago back, and if you want to reference it, just put Stacey Marie Robinson in the search bar of our site, or the search on our site, and you'll be able to listen. I think it was about a 30 to 45 minute interview in depth about Stacey and her background. So we'll get right into it. What was the reason that you found Kaya Publishing?
It was kind of out of necessity. I really wanted to publish the books that I had written kind of throughout high school and college, and I wasn't having any luck finding an agent or a publisher to kind of take the project on. So I decided it would probably be easier for me, and actually a little bit more fun, if I could publish the books myself. That way I could control who I'm marketing them to and how I'm marketing them, and I really didn't have to worry about fitting into any other kind of publishing genre or any other kind of box. So Kaya Publishing was pretty much rather just for my own books, but in the future I'm hoping that I can kind of embrace other writers like me that are maybe not fitting into the publishing world in the way that they would like to, and just kind of other people like me coming together to tell the same type of story. So.
Excellent. Well, I'm a firm believer, and one of the reasons why I know that one of the reasons why you do what you do is because you want to tell other people's stories and provide them a platform. And I do the same sort of thing through my podcast. I just want people to come on and share their stories. So I feel that we have something in common, and it's very important. Where did the name Kaya or Kaya come from?
It's funny because it's something I kind of searched for online. I really didn't want to use a personal name, so I wanted something to kind of represent what I thought urban or Black Canadian writers were. And I was thinking of, the sky and stars, and I found the literal translation for Kaya Publishing was Diamond in the Sky. So it was an African name. I'm not exactly sure of the specific origin, but I thought Kaya was a good representation of how I felt, Black Canadian writers to be. And so it means diamond in the sky, and I just thought it was a perfect fit for what I was hoping to do.
Very nice, very nice. So I always like when people are birth a vision and it comes to fruition. So can you take us back to the start of where the vision came to put on the expo?
It started, I'd say, a few years ago when I decided I was going to get serious about publishing my books and selling my books, and I decided to participate in a few events here in Toronto. So I was a vendor at the Afrofest for a couple of years, and the Irie Music Festival, and also the Word on the Street Book Festival on Queen Street there. So I did that for a few years, and it was a great experience. And then I'd heard that in the U.S. there was a great number of Black book fairs that were just really specifically targeted to the kind of market I was hoping to reach. So I took a trip to Houston, I think in 2010, and I went to a really good book festival down there. And I went to another book expo in New York, and I said to myself, there's such a specific market for this type of book that it was a shame that in Toronto I kind of just had to go to a general book fair or music event to kind of hope that I would find that type of readership. So I just thought it'd be a good idea to kind of just try to, maybe start small and give that type of book fair to other writers like myself, just focused on Black Canadian writing or urban fiction writing. So the urban book fair that I have in mind is just going to be something that writers like me can participate in, or maybe amateur writers or professional, whatever level, but just kind of like-minded writers and a like-minded readership. So I thought it'd be a good idea to have it in Toronto because it exists in pretty much every other major city in the U.S. has a specific book fair like that. So I thought it was time Toronto had the same.
So we're going along our journey here. So you've had an idea. You said, okay, I want to bring this to fruition. What was the next step after you got the idea? What did you have to do next to get it going?
Well, right now I'm just working on connecting with other writers in the city, and that's been going pretty good so far because there's a lot of us out there that, again, aren't really necessarily published with a mainstream publisher, but we're writing and we're passionate about it. So right now I'm still kind of just reaching out to people, seeing who would be interested in participating, kind of communicating with the Toronto Public Library and just other, book industry people in the city, just to see where is there a good place for a festival like this, who's going to participate and who's going to kind of support it. So right now I'm really just kind of going in the community and looking for other people who would stand behind this idea and then help me see it through by next year.
Excellent. So the first part, I guess the first stop on the train, so to speak, is the panel discussion that you're having this Saturday. So how did that come about, and do you have special guests appearing on the panel, or is it, and if you do have some special guests, could you share them with us?
Oh, definitely. This discussion came about just, again, through conversation I had with a few writers in the city, and we were just talking about urban fiction in Canada and how it's so thriving in the U.S. and how we really wish that we could kind of create a similar infrastructure up here. So I thought it would be a good idea just to get a few people that I knew and other writers and other people that are supporters of urban culture and get them together just to talk about creating a definition of what is Canadian urban fiction, really just trying to make it specific and separate it from all other cultures and say, okay, what is urban fiction going to mean for us here in Canada, especially since what I write I would like to classify as urban fiction. So I didn't have to look far. There's so many good people around me, and I was able to put a panel together of 6 people and an additional moderator along with myself. On my panel, I have D.A. Bourne, who's a life fiction author. I have Tanika Chambers, who's a Christian nonfiction author. I have General. He's a hip hop artist in the city and also goes around and educates students on hip hop culture and kind of urban Canadian culture. I have Angelo, who's a children's author, Talisha Ng, as we all know, the relationship blogger, and a friend of mine, Camille Ramnath, who's an urban educated. She's a scholar in urban education from the Toronto District School Board, so she's going to be joining us as well. So I've got this panel of 6 people coming together on Saturday, and we're just going to discuss Canadian urban fiction and what it means and what we're going to do about it. How are we going to create this voice here in Toronto?
Excellent. And so right at the present time, what do you feel is the state of Canadian urban fiction?
Funnily enough, I don't think it's not saying it doesn't exist, but it's not very strong if it does exist. And I realize this because I've had other writers that have been searching for information on Canadian urban fiction, and they found me as a result of their research. So I find that there's not many people out there who are either claiming to be urban fiction writers or who are really developing this genre in particular. So I know there's a lot of great African Canadian writers, and they've been here for decades, but I don't think anybody's claimed urban fiction yet or really taken the time to classify what it means here in Canada. So right now I'd say there's not much of a scene with it, but it's something I'm kind of hoping to see develop, and hopefully Saturday is just one of the first steps in developing the genre, or at least the conversation about it.
Would you say that there's not much of a genre, but maybe there is a genre, it's not developed, or there's not a, I guess maybe I'm out of place here. There seems like there's a community here, but it's not developed. Am I wrong in saying that?
Yeah, that sounds about right to me, because I do think there's a lot of people that write this type of fiction, and maybe we just haven't come together yet, because I know there's people out there, but again, there's nothing really, there hasn't been like a publishing company or just somewhere for us to kind of come together and have this conversation and say, okay, this is what I'm doing, and this is why I'm doing it. So I think maybe once the conversation gets started, maybe there's other writers out there that haven't connected yet that could kind of work together on kind of developing a little scene for it, or, just developing the genre a bit more.
When you think about Canadian urban fiction and what the next step should be, or what other people, when you're in conversation about this genre, tell you, what are some of the things that need to be put in place to take it to the next level?
I think the definition was a start. When I said, okay, what would I like to talk about? The definition of Canadian urban fiction was something that definitely had to kind of be established, because there's already a definition in existence in the U.S., and I don't think that's what we have here. So I think it's important to define it, and then to kind of also define like a common vision, like what do we want the future of this genre to be? How do we want it to be represented in the larger, the larger publishing industry? So I think just kind of classifying it and kind of stating, okay, what's the role of it going to be? What is the future of it going to be? And in the long run, what do we want this, like, how do we want this to represent us? So I think one of the first stages is kind of just organizing those thoughts in one central place.
With the network that you're building with these artists, these writers, I'm going to put an interesting question. Are the majority black male, black female, or a pretty equal mix?
It seems like a pretty equal mix so far, what I've come across. And what I find interesting, too, is not everybody's kind of in the same lane. Like, some are doing it more from a religious perspective, and some are doing it more in a relationship tip. So it does seem a bit equal male and female-wise, but almost within that, everybody still has their own their slant to it, or their level of expertise, which is an interesting addition to it.
Nice. Well, I want to chat with you with the little time we do have left. And again, if anyone wants to ask Stacey Marie any questions, whether it's about this event coming up this weekend or just Canadian urban fiction in general, certainly give us a tweet at DRVIBESHOW. With how difficult, how challenging is the marketplace out there for urban Canadian fiction writers? Running off the tongue here. Is it challenging? It sounds like from what you're sharing with us, it is not easy.
It hasn't been easy. I can only speak from my experience, but it hasn't been easy for me. And I think it was mainly because I almost didn't know how to classify what I was writing, and I didn't feel like I could easily kind of compare it to anything else that was out there literature-wise. And maybe some wouldn't even say it's literature on that level that it would be recognized as such. So I'm sorry, could you please repeat the question?
No, I'm just saying, how difficult is it for your writers or the writers like yourself to break or make it, even of some little notoriety, in Canada?
I think very difficult here, only because the infrastructure doesn't exist yet. And there's dozens of publishing companies in the U.S. that have kind of established themselves as urban fiction publishing companies. And there's dozens of titles and book clubs and, like I said, book fairs. So I think for a Canadian writer to come in and expect to kind of get the same support is very difficult and very challenging. And what I've noticed, and again, only speaking from my own experience, is that self-publishing has been a method that seems to have worked for a lot of other urban fiction writers outside of Canada. So that's the route that I've taken, and I wouldn't be surprised if other writers also do the same thing and say, okay, instead of searching for a publisher, I'm just going to create my own industry within the industry. I'm going to create my own publishing company or my own method of getting the work out there. So I do think it's very challenging, and only because I haven't seen many other writers, if any other writers in this genre, actually get to that status of being published with a mainstream publisher or having widespread sales or anything like that, at least not in urban fiction. So definitely challenging, I'd say.
Do these writers get support from the Black community in Canada?
As far as I know, I think everybody seems to have their little support system going on. And I know I have people that have, read one or two of my books, and they email me and they check in and they want to make sure, okay, are there more books coming? This is the kind of subject I like to read about, and I want to see more of it. So if I have that kind of support, I'm assuming that everybody is kind of hearing the same thing from their networks as well. So I think there's an audience out there, I guess. It's just now up to us to make sure that the material is available and that we could kind of feed their appetite for this type of literature and, just watch it all grow as a result.
Nice. What would you like to see as the next step along this journey? Because you have the panel discussion happening on Saturday. What do you vision as the next step?
I would like to see, not just within Black History Month, which is kind of how, it's timely, I guess, right now, but I'd like to see this just as a constant conversation piece about our community, whether it's the Black community or urban community, just the fact that our stories are very unique. They're not like the stories of, other Canadian writers, say, that grew up in Toronto in the 60s or 70s or 80s and really established themselves as great writers. I would just like to see this generation also establish themselves in the same way with a different version of their stories and a different side to living in this city or living in this country. So I'd like the story almost to be more widespread, because I just think it's a wonderful culture, and you know about it yourself, and you know about it within the community, but I'd like to see it shared kind of with the rest of Canada that maybe doesn't know about this side of, Canadian living. So I would definitely like the story to continue, and just the culture as a whole to get more exposure just through writing, not just through music or, other activities, but through the writing itself. That would be really great to see happen.
Are you seeing more and more young African Canadian writers coming into the marketplace, or younger African Canadians wanting to get into writing?
From what I've seen, and even within the Toronto Public Library, they're really good with some of their collections that they have. But there are a lot of young writers that are getting in anthologies and different collections of writing. So I think it's an interesting generation. Again, these are like first and second generations that have not really established themselves in literature yet. So I imagine there's a lot of stories that they're telling, and maybe telling it through their schools or telling it through programming. So I think there's a lot of voices out there. They just really need a place to go and a place to be recognized, like specifically for their experience and what they're saying. So I believe there are a lot of writers out there that, just kind of need their voice amplified, basically.
You mentioned about self-publishing. Can you share your experience about self-publishing, why you did it, and how you feel it's a great avenue for young Blacks, African Canadians, if they want, or African Canadians of any age who want to publish on their own? Talk, if you could share about your experience and some of the positive attributes of going the self-publishing route.
Okay. And again, it was something I did out of necessity. I didn't really have, I felt like I was running out of options and just hoping that somebody would come and save my books and save me and give me a voice. And it was very empowering. If nothing else, it's very empowering to know that I'm going to tell my stories kind of in the way that I want to tell them, and I don't have to worry about being edited in a certain way or marketed in a certain way. So I think it's a great venue for other writers to go, only because you're controlling, your own image, and you're really, really taking control of your voice and your community, and you're keeping it almost, I wouldn't say within the community, but I think it's empowering that the businesses maybe grow from, just where it is, at the grassroots level, that the writer themselves is the person that is publishing and sharing and marketing and selling. And it's empowering to think that if all the writers that I know of are going along a similar path and taking control of their businesses and how their writing was being sold, I think that would really just help the culture in general and just kind of help other writers like them come along, because just from what I know about the publishing industry, it's probably very easy to get lost within it, and there's probably so much else going on in the greater picture in Canadian publishing that just kind of having control over your voice is probably, it's a good feeling for me, and I would imagine it would be very empowering for others as well. So I would recommend it to other writers, not to say that going mainstream is negative, but I just personally find it very empowering, and it's very satisfying to kind of see it grow and just to see the results, of your little story and how it can affect people. So I definitely am in support of the self-publishing method.
What gets you excited about not only Saturday's event, but the future events to come?
I'm just excited to have the conversation, because this is a journey I've pretty much been going on, by myself as a writer, again, whether I was in high school or throughout university. It's a journey I've been going on alone and struggling with alone and trying to figure it out alone. So it's nice to see that these people that I've kind of met along my way, that they're also working on their craft, and they're, Tanika, for example, has like a web series coming out on her new book, Single, Writing, and Waiting, and I know Talisha's got a lot of events that she does. So it's really just encouraging to see everybody working hard in what they're doing, and I really just I'm excited about seeing it kind of grow and the support grow, and the support we all have for each other, I think, is great. So I'm excited about that.
Nice. So what are you seeing as the future for the African Canadian urban fiction market?
I'm hoping it's something that grows. I'm hoping that, again, like there's a great African Canadian literature market that's already been established, that I believe that there's so many voices and so many different ways of telling our stories that I would like to see the urban fiction genre kind of grow just for what it is, just the regular everyday stories of the city, stories of this generation. I would like to see that story just become another common story of the African Canadian experience or the urban Canadian experience. I want that to be valid in the publishing world. I don't want people to look at urban fiction like it's fluff, or they call it like ghetto literature or street literature. Like, I think it's kind of more than that. So I hope the stories become validated. I hope the genre becomes validated in Canada. And I hope that we're unique not only within other Canadian genres, but also unique in comparison to the European or the American versions of urban fiction. So I really just hope it's strengthened in the years to come.
If a young or a person of African Canadian heritage came up to you and said, Stacey Marie, I want to start writing urban fiction, what would you tell?
Mm-hmm.
What would you tell them?
I would tell them something that I kind of learned almost the hard way on my own, is just write what you know. And I think younger in my writing adventures, I used to I'd kind of lean towards the American style of writing, the American lingo, and that's kind of all I knew through popular culture. So I realized that it's not authentic, obviously, and it's probably not going to be as good if you're trying to write something or trying to be this genre or trying to, have a certain voice. So if somebody came to me and said they wanted to write urban fiction, I would kind of tell them just, write what you know, write what you see here in Toronto, write the stories of the people you know or the people you hear about, and just really keep it authentic. But the good thing about this genre is I think that it's very kind of down to earth, and it's not really literature. And on the level of where it's describing, foreign things or different locations, it's something that's very much like in the moment and very, cutting edge, I think, and very localized. So I would just tell somebody, just write from your heart, write what you see. And I think that's what urban fiction is. It's just a very realistic experience, just translated through writing in that way.
Well, we'll end it off on that. I say thank you so much for taking time because I know the countdown is on, so to speak, to this big event. I know it's going to be outstanding. I know it.
Thank you, and thank you again for having me on your
Oh,
show.
the mic,
and a pleasure.
the mic is always open, and if do spread the word. If any of your contemporaries want to be on the show, the mic is always open. Before we let you go, we'd say first of all thank you, but also give the details on what's coming up this Saturday.
Okay, so the discussion is called Defining Canadian Urban Fiction. It's taking place this Saturday, February the 2nd, at the Toronto Public Library Malvern branch, which is located right by Malvern Town Centre at Nielsen and Shepherd, or around McLevin, Nielsen and McLevin. So it's taking place this Saturday from 2 to 4 p.m. Admission is free. It's going to be a great discussion, and everybody's encouraged to come out and talk about your favorite urban fiction books, talk about the future of Canadian urban fiction, and hopefully just really have a good, informative, and a great discussion with the writers and the other experts that'll be there on the panel.
And if people want to find out more information about this event, how can they do that?
Online, I'm at kayapublishing.com, and Kaya is Kya. You can also find me with Kaya Publishing through Facebook, through Twitter, YouTube, so it's all posted on either of those social media sites. So just a search for KYA Publishing can bring you to either of the sites, and the information is posted on all of them.
Well, that's outstanding. I'm hoping that I can make it out to the tail end of the event. I do have another event to make it to, but I hope I can make it out to that event. And, I'm looking. I know it's going to be very successful. We thank you for all that you do and bringing a community together. That's outstanding.
Well, thank you, and thanks again for the support.
It's always there. It's always there. You can count on me. No problem. That's all good. And it's a Dr. Vibe show live, and we were just speaking with Stacey Marie Robinson, who is starting a movement, which is a good thing. And I'm not a writer yet, and I'll just leave that word yet. But something's up. But we'll just keep that under wraps right now. As always, it's the Dr. Vibe show, the 2012 Black Weblog Awards winner as Best International Blog. If you want to touch base with us, hey, hit us up on Twitter. You know the Twitter handle, but really go to the website, and everything you want to connect with is right there. And I just want to announce we just recently launched another new thing on our site. If you want to leave me a voicemail, you can actually do it by clicking on the Send Dr. Vibe a Voicemail panel on the right-hand side of the page. And